Everyone, remain calm.
Yeah, that's how it always starts. But then later there's running and screaming.
Somebody talk to me! What is happening?
Welcome to Jurassic World.
You're listening to the Jurassic Park Podcast.
You want to consult here or in my bungalow? Hold on to your butt.
Well, we're back.
Hello, and welcome to the 7th episode of the Jurassic Park Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Jost, and we're here to discuss all things Jurassic Park. In this episode, we have a few pieces of news, and also part 2 of our discussion on references and Easter eggs in Jurassic World. So let's get into the news from around the world.
18 minutes and your company catches up on 10 years of research.
Access rate program. Access new security.
These pictures were taken in hospital in Costa Rica 48 hours ago.
I don't want to jump to any conclusions, but look.
Oh boy, do I hate being right all the time.
Today, I guarantee it.
An article on QZ.com says, "We're not even close to discovering all the dinosaur types that ever existed." And it's a broad claim, but there is a lot of science behind this. And back in 2006, they estimated that there was 1,844 discoverable dinosaur genera. Now that puts it at a pace of 15 or so per year. But since then, we've actually been finding a lot more than we expected. Now we're close to about 20 per year. And so that means that 2006 projection is a little bit off. People are now estimating that we could be well over 2,000 types of dinosaurs. And unfortunately, a lot of people are suspecting that there's a lot of dinosaurs that we'll never even know existed, mostly due to geological forces. They also point out that we really can't categorize a few different types of things we perceive as dinosaurs. Pteranodons and mosasaurs. They're technically not dinosaurs, which makes it a lot trickier. I found a great article by Steve Rosenbaum on HuffingtonPost.com. The heading is, "Are Critics the Real Dinosaurs in Jurassic World?" His article goes on to point out that critics are a little bit too critical of Jurassic World. He quotes a lot of critics who basically trash the movie for not being as serious as they hoped or being a little too joyless. But the author, he almost denied even going to the movie because of all these bad reviews. But obviously, people didn't care, and they dismissed all the critics, and they went anyway, and they made it one of the biggest movies that's ever been made. It's a great article, and I highly suggest you go to Huffington Post and check it out. I'll post a link in the show notes. Now I know, it's been 2 weeks now, and I still don't have any box office numbers for you. I'm still away on vacation, but next week, I'll have everything you need, and I'll do a little bit of a recap as to what happened over the box office those past 2 weekends. Let's hope Jurassic World is still hanging in there somewhere in the top 3. We are now entering the section where spoilers will be discussed. I suggest you stop what you're doing and leave now.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Let's open up the doors to the Visitor Center, where we'll feature part 2 in our discussion on Jurassic World references and Easter eggs with Dan Caron. Let's move on to another list here. It should be a little quicker. We have one. It's 10 more Jurassic World Easter eggs that you may have missed, also from MoviePilot.com. Let's start with number 1 here. It's the Chaos Theory Butterfly Effect. This is definitely an Easter egg. Now, when I first saw the movie, I didn't even realize this is something that when I got home and I think you told me, you said, "Did you see that part or whatever?" And I was like, I didn't even realize. You're right. It actually, the 2 blood drops drip different ways, reflecting the scene that he did with Dr. Ellie Sattler, and he dropped the water on her hand there. So this is definitely an Easter egg. and a really good one at that.
Yeah, this is definitely super subtle. It's just something that when you look back on it, you're like, oh my God, like that. Yeah, you're right. That's so cool. This is totally an Easter egg.
Yeah, and number 2 is Claire ties up her shirt, and it's referencing the scene where, actually no scene. It's just Ellie Sattler has her clothes tied up in the same knot like Claire does halfway through this movie. So this is a direct reference to Jurassic Park. Nothing more.
I was gonna say, this is the part where she almost transforms and she's like ready to take on this whole adventure, right? So yeah, like I feel like that's where Claire almost transforms into a new character that more closely mimics Ellie in a way. So there you go. Yeah.
That was a great reference. I got it. I don't know if anybody else did, but I got it. I almost skipped one. Here we go. Number 3. The T-Rex at the end is the same as the first movie. Now, I knew this going in because of a lot of the promo and the T-Rex from the website. If you looked at it, you could probably tell because of the scratches on her neck that it was the same T-Rex. Now, when you're watching the movie, it's very, very hard, and you have to really be looking to notice that it's the same Rex. Otherwise, you probably just assume it's just, any old T-Rex. And I actually wish they had done a little bit more to give you an Easter egg. It's definitely an Easter egg. I'm going to give it that. But I don't know. Do you think it is?
I got to be honest. I noticed that it was the same Rex from the very beginning. I feel like, it wasn't explicitly mentioned. It wasn't something that was, anything really drew attention to. But I remember when the Rex was, I believe, laying on her side, and the Indominus was going to go down to it was looking bad.
Take her out.
Yeah, it was looking bad. But I feel like it's somewhere around that part of the scene is where you see those scars, and that's when I was like, oh man, like yes, that's the same T-Rex. So, and I think that not only that, but the flare, that also has a bit to do with the first Rex. So I would consider it an Easter egg. I think it's a pretty blatant, especially given the scars, but I would put it more so on the Easter egg side.
Yeah, it's tough because when we were talking about Dr. Wu, he's just the character, and I think we could say the same for this Rex. It is a character, but I don't think it's very overt that it's the same one. A lot of people I've talked to don't even know. They had no clue, and I think that battle scene would have been like 100% better for people who didn't know. If they knew it was the same Rex, I think it would have had much more impact than it did. So
we've actually mentioned in the past, that we were like in a prior podcast that we were actually sad when that scene was happening, right? Mm-hmm. But I think I was sad because I knew it was the same Rex, So I don't know why I would have felt that immediate reaction if I didn't know. So there was definitely something there that tipped off that it was the same T-Rex. So I'm gonna say, an Easter egg for some. I noticed it immediately.
Yeah, and like you said, you need that emotion. That's what that scene is banking on. And I don't know if they pulled it off for the people who knew, but the people who didn't know, like, I don't know, when that Spinosaurus kills the T-Rex in the third movie, you don't have that feeling. So, because you just assume it's any old Rex. It's definitely not the one from the first park, because it's a different island. It could be one of the ones from the second movie, but we don't know. There's no specific reference to it being one of those Rexes, so you don't have any feeling behind it. But if they had overtly said at one point on the tour, like, this is the old Rex from the original park. Take a look at the scars on her neck. Maybe one of the tour guides could have said that, but maybe that would have been too overt. But I think they should have given a little bit more of a reference so people had that emotion to cling to. So moving on to number 4, we have Lowry's glasses, and I'll give it an Easter egg. This is an Easter egg. I'm assuming it was meant to happen. He's wearing basically the same type of glasses that Dennis Nedry was wearing in the first film, and he's got a very similar role, I guess. He's working in the control room. He's a computer guy, so I'd assume his glasses were a direct Easter egg to the first movie. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is... I actually didn't notice it until just now, and I'm going to notice it every time from here on out. So I think that's kind of like the feeling you get from finding out about an Easter egg. And you're like, oh, man, like that's so cool, So
yeah.
I think what could have been cool is because Lowry was almost like the anti-Nedry, and I think I've mentioned that before too, is... it would have been cool to maybe feature Dilophosaurus as one of his little, figurines that he had. Even if maybe he picked him up, or her, I guess, Dilophosaurus up in the end. Like that could have been like a super cool Easter egg too.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you're right. That would have been awesome. That was maybe a missed opportunity, but. I'll give him a break.
Yeah, no, I think those glasses, that's a great touch. And I think, now knowing that, I'm definitely going to notice it from here on out.
Yeah. And number 5 is Jimmy Buffett. And so we actually already covered him, so let's skip over that. Let's go to number 6. Chris Pratt's name is Owen in Jurassic World. This is not anything. This is just, let's point out that his name is Owen, because Vince Vaughn's character was Nick Van Owen. That has nothing to do with anything. I'm going to call it nothing. It's not a reference. It's not an Easter egg. I'm going to go with nothing.
Yeah. Flaw in thought there. Yeah.
Now, do you think it was a flaw in the writers are like
to be honest,
movie writers?
Yeah, to be honest, I noticed it and I was like, oh, like they made a character with a very similar name to a prior character that they, had in a different film. But, it didn't bother me. Like, it's not like I something that I would like obsess over. But I mean, I thought it was weird that they picked a very, super similar name.
Yeah. I mean, I did think that obviously, but, I don't think it's any kind of reference or anything. One thing I am thinking about is, like, maybe when we played with the toys, there was the Nick Van Owen toy, and I'm trying to think if I specifically would have called him Owen or Nick Van Owen. I don't remember. I guess we'll never know.
I don't recall. Yeah.
I feel like it could have been Owen, but...
I think it was Owen, but either way, I mean, like... what's the connection there other than like a throwback? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I would say no connection whatsoever.
No connection. And number 7 is the green button. This is very similar. I don't know. I have a hard time with this one because they're trying to reference the push to close, the green button that Ellie Sattler pushes, and they're saying that the mother of Zach, she tells him to push the green button on the cell phone to answer the call. Now she directly says, push the green button. But I have a really, really hard time making this any kind of Easter egg or reference. I don't know. I mean, it could be a reference. I'll give it that. It could be. But I don't know. I feel like it's maybe a stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a stretch, but either way, I mean, that was kind of a significant button, from the first movie, and now moving into this, she didn't have to say push the green button, so I think that it could have been like a very mild attempt at kind of trying to throw that in there, but I would say like an insignificant one at that. So,
because it really doesn't connect at all to anything that's happening. Like, it doesn't connect to Jurassic Park, like that scene. And Jurassic World, they're just about to go on an airplane, and she's just saying, push the green button to pick up the call. So it's not like the scenes are similar or anything. So I guess it's just a very, very light reference. I don't know. It's a tough one for me.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same thing with this next one, number 8. And it says, did Steven Spielberg throw in a Jaws reference? Because there was a shark in the movie?
I could see the connection people are making, but really at the end of the day, I mean, the closest thing that I think it, may resemble it is maybe like the movie posters from Jaws. You kind of see like a similar, coming out of the water to eat whatever. In the poster, it's a human. In this, it's a shark. But I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's the only.
Maybe that's
connection.
Almost like symbolism in a way. How a shark is kind of like the sea monster of today, whereas this is the sea monster to the sharks of that day. I don't know. Maybe that's even a stretch on my thinking, but I never would have really put much value in that thought.
Yeah, this article is saying it's a callback to this Jaws franchise and saying it had a similar angled scene. I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. I have a hard time buying this one, but, we'll give it to him. I don't know. Maybe it's just a slight reference.
So really, so sorry, going back to that.
No, go ahead.
So that's really only talking about that's not even taking the shark into consideration then for the Jaws reference. That's really just the angle of the scene.
I guess I'm assuming it's maybe the jumping out of the water scene. Maybe it's just a similar angle. I don't know. It's very very vague in what it's trying to call out here, and I don't know. I don't feel like it has enough clues to give it any kind of reference or Easter egg. So I'm gonna just kind of pass.
Yeah, pass.
Now, number 9 is the Dilophosaurus hologram. And I think this one goes in line with a lot of the other ones we've seen so far. And I think we should call it a reference.
I mean, it's cool. It was nice to see the Dilophosaurus again, but even if it was only a hologram. But significance, it's kind of just there in front of your face,
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of a major player in that scene.
In the scene,
the kid throws it on and scares the raptor, and it gives them a few seconds to get away while the raptor's distracted, and it's basically doing the same. I mean, not that a Dilophosaurus could do much more, but it's doing the same thing that it did, when it attacked Dennis. But I think it's just a quick reference. It's not an Easter egg. It's out in your face. They're obviously playing upon it with the raptor being interfered by it. So it's not an Easter egg in my book.
Yeah, me either.
And number 10 is Objects in the Mirror. And it shows the old scene from Jurassic Park where the T-Rex is in the mirror and it's closer than it appears. I don't even know what they're trying to point out here. I think it's the part with the raptors while she's driving the big truck with the kids in the back, and the raptors are coming up, and she's looking at them in the mirror. I don't know. It's a really, really tough one. Easter egg? What do you think?
I mean, to be honest, I'm off the top of my head, I don't remember if I remember seeing that text or not. And if I did, it was probably nice to see at the time. It took me back to I was obviously thinking of this scene, but I don't know if I even remember seeing it, so it's tough.
Yeah, it's a good question. If the words objects in this mirror are closer than they appear, if those words are on the mirror, maybe we can give it a reference. But if I remember correctly, that scene is so fast. Like, she just looks over and sees the raptor coming up and just moves over and tries to squash it between a tree. I don't feel like it holds on the mirror long enough to call it an Easter egg or a reference, really. It's just kind of just another scene in the movie. Now, to play off this, I've had a lot of people say that it's a reference to Indiana Jones, actually. And when he's driving the truck and he tries to, I think it was a motorcycle, maybe run a motorcycle off the road. And, I mean, that was, honestly, I feel like that was more of a reference than this. But I don't really buy either as any kind of reference.
Yeah, me neither. I think this one's possibly a stretch.
Yeah, and that really sums up all the Easter eggs on this list. I don't know if you have any other ones that you notice yourself. I actually have one, and it actually goes back to the Mosasaur shark scene. And when he pulls on the shark and brings it back down into the water, you hear the similar sound from the electrical fence in the original Jurassic Park when the T-Rex breaks loose. There's a specific sound of like the twang of that metal wire while it's breaking, and you hear that same sound while the Mosasaurus pulls down the shark. So I feel like that's more so of an Easter egg.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. To be honest, I didn't even catch it, but I'm gonna have to go back and when I see it again, I'm going to have to keep an eye out for it, because that's something that definitely sounds like they could have thrown that in there, because it had such a distinctive sound to it.
Yeah, it's very specific sound, so I feel like that's more of an Easter egg, so I'll give myself some credit and go Easter egg.
I think there were actually a couple of others. One being... Winston's was the name of the restaurant at Jurassic World, and it's a reference to Stan Winston, and he was the special effects and animatronics person who actually, helped develop Jurassic World and the dinosaurs, Jurassic Park and the dinosaurs in that film.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, and if you also see. There's also a entree in there that has to do with the Chilean sea bass. So at a hunt, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was an awesome one. And how did they not include that on this list?
I have no clue.
It kind of escaped my mind. I do remember that one, but that's strange that they didn't include this. I've checked out the /film.com list real quick. And, some of the ones that you've pointed out so far on there. And here's another one. Brad Bird is the voice of the monorail. If you don't know Brad Bird, he recently directed Tomorrowland, and he's the director of The Incredibles. And I would definitely say that's an Easter egg / cameo. You would basically have no clue it was him. It's just basically like... Richard Kiley. I guess they spared no expense in getting Brad Bird to do the voiceover for the monorail.
So how would you feel about this one? This is something that I actually found, and it's also in this /film Jurassic World Easter eggs article. When the kids are in the gyrosphere and the Indominus Rex, they're stuck inside, and that's when they encounter him. There's a similar scene in terms of the way it was filmed in the original movie, where Tim and Lex are, in the car, right? Mm-hmm. The glass caves in. There's a similar, they're in glass within the gyrosphere, and that kind of is almost a similar scene in the way it's filmed. Would you consider something like that an Easter egg?
I don't know. There's a lot of parallels between these two movies, so it's very hard to say if they're Easter eggs or just references or something else entirely. I don't know.
It's tough because, looking back on this film, I mean, it really catered to the people who grew up watching and I mean, like, idolizing the original Jurassic Park. And I think we've touched on this before as well, where, they made so many references and so many hints toward that particular film that they made everyone super happy by doing so. But at the same time, it kind of went its own route and was able to I think, create more for almost like a future generation of kids and people who are going to grow up with this movie now. Yeah. So I think, they paid a lot of homage to the original film, and I'm happy they did. Don't get me wrong. And I love the Easter eggs, the things that are really super hidden in there that you can kind of like watch, and it's almost like, it's fun to kind of hunt for them, but it's also great to see the things that are kind of just out in your face, and you're like, I'm so glad that's here. It's tough. So a lot of these things I wouldn't have considered Easter eggs, but for the most part, it's fun to see them again.
Speaking of that gyrosphere scene, I guess you could say they're maybe recreating it a little bit. Specifically, one thing that I noticed, actually, now that you mentioned it, when the cell phone is on the bottom of the gyrosphere and they're upside down, and the cell phone's going off, and he can't reach it to turn it off. I feel like that's kind of referencing the first movie where they can't turn off the flashlight.
Yeah, it's the same scene.
And that's what attracts the T-Rex to them. And in this movie, it attracts the Indominus to them. So I feel like, yeah, you're right. They're recreating and they're referencing. They're putting Easter eggs, whatever. They're doing it all, I think.
Yeah. So I think they did a good job of making everyone kind of happy and everything. I thought one other, they did feature little amber pieces throughout the park too, which again kind of ties to the whole idea behind Jurassic Park and how it all is kind of possible. But I thought throwing things like that in there was kind of cool. Not necessarily an Easter egg, like a lot of these other things, but it was nice to see these different things.
Yeah, and actually, now that I'm looking at the Slash Film article here, and I noticed it specifically, like right when it happened in the film, at the end where they're kind of cornered by the raptors, it's another identical recreation from the first movie. They're cornered by those raptors, and there's literally no way out. So what happens? A bigger dinosaur comes over and distracts it. So in the first movie, the T-Rex comes over and stops the raptors from attacking the group. In the new movie, there's 3 raptors attacking them, and the Indominus shows up and stops it. But she doesn't stop it completely. She's about to attack everybody. So it's a little bit different of an ending, but I think they're referencing the original movie, basically recreating that scene.
Yeah, I think a lot of them were kind of recreated, which I don't discourage, but I think they did a good job of kind of making it their own at the same time.
Yeah.
And not necessarily making it like a reboot.
Yeah. So I think we kind of hit everything there is to hit. If you think there's other ones that we missed, you can hit us up on Twitter at Jurassic Park Pod, or you can send us an email, JurassicParkPod@gmail.com, and let us know if there's any other references, Easter eggs, recreations, anything like that we missed. I'm sure there's a few out there, so if you got any good ones, just let us know, and we'll try to discuss them next time. So thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Brad.
Take it easy. Thanks for listening to the 7th episode of the Jurassic Park Podcast. Next week, I'll be back from my trip, and I'll focus a bit more on the recent box office numbers, news, and more. You can do us a huge favor by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. It will seriously help us build our rankings and make it easier for fans like you to find us. If you want to get a hold of us, you can tweet us at Jurassic Park Pod, or you can email us with any news stories, MP3s, news segments, or comments. JurassicParkPod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and enjoy.